Okay. Today we're going to see currency translation. Currency translation, yesterday I gave a brief introduction. So yeah, it is, when the group currency and the local currency is different, which means when there is a group company or a parent company which has its subsidiary company or branches in other countries, then each country has to prepare and provide the details of their functioning in their respective currency. So when the group company receives these statements in the local currency of the respective country, they have to translate it into the group currency so that they can prepare a consolidated profit and loss account and a consolidated P&L account and a consolidated cash flow statement. Sorry. So these are the three primary statements which are prepared by the group company or group holding company. So, or the parent company. Now, the group company here in our example is in USA and records all the transactions in USD, and the child company or the subsidiary company is in Canada. So in our example, 1 USD is equal to 0.7845 Canadian dollars. Okay, we're going to see a very simple example, and in our example there is one parent company or one holding company and one subsidiary company. So US company and Canadian company. Okay, so this is the parent and this is the child. In other words, in accounting terms, this is known as the holding company and this is known as subsidiary company. Subsidiary company. Okay, so 1 USD is equal to 0.7845. I've not referred any exchange rate website. I'm just giving a random number. So this is the conversion rate. So 1 USD is equal to 0.7845 Canadian dollars. So whatever amount you have, if you want to convert it into USD, you have to use this ratio. Okay. Now let's see the steps which is required. Now, in while doing the currency translations, we need three models. One is the consolidation model, and the second one is the rates model, which stores all the rates, like these rates are stored in the rates model, and the ownership model. Ownership model gives you the relationship between two entities, which one is the parent and which one is the child. So it gives the relationship. So to define the relationship, only when you define this relationship, you will know that you have to convert, this is local currency and this is the group currency. You will know only when the relationship is defined, you will know that you have to translate this amount into USD. So to define that relationship, we need the ownership model. So these are the three models which are required to run the currency translation in a consolidation system. When it comes to planning, you need only these two. Okay, planning model and rates model. Okay, for planning we don't need ownership model, but I'm explaining the consolidation part, where in consolidation model you need the rates model as well as ownership model to do the currency translation. Okay, now let's go into the system. And see how things are defined. me log in. So again, these are all a bit advanced business rules, which are, from interview point of view, you should be in a position to say, yes, I know how to do this. I understand the logic. I understand how the system performs. All these things from interview point of view, you should be in a position to explain. But technically, when you get into a role, a real time, a job, you will not be given all these things at the initial stage itself, because this is and all is at the advanced level, and this will be given to the BPC admin, who has either been doing this for quite a long time. So especially for a person who is entering into BPC and getting into a BPC job, and who's from a BW background, normally this sort of highly FI finance related activities will not be given at the first go, unless or otherwise they're given specific training in the organization itself, because currency translation will vary from one organization to another organization. The rates, how to input the rates, and what are the different settings, which we are going to have a look at. All this will vary from one organization to another organization. So you can't just push a person and say, okay, take care of currency translation, unless the previous person who's looking into it, or your senior in the BPC team will impart or will give you the necessary training before you take it over from him. Okay, so don't worry if this is not going to be pushed on you when you enter into a BPC project. Now, the first thing is, let me explain. The first thing is the R account dimension. R account dimension is a rate model rate model member, which will determine, let me go into, which will determine what sort of an account it is. So let me go into dimensions, R account. Okay. So R account defines whether the account is average or closing. Okay, so yesterday we've seen that what is the meaning of average and what is the meaning of closing. So average is nothing but used for P&L accounts, and closing is used for balance sheet accounts. Average will take a sum of the opening balance and the closing balance of the foreign exchange rates, referring to some websites or bank websites, RBI websites, or in their respective countries. Like yesterday we've seen an example, www.xe.com. So at the beginning of the month and at the end of the month, they will get the exchange rates from their authorized bank. If the organization has a special tie-up with one particular bank, that bank will send the details on a monthly basis. Okay, this is the exchange rate we are following right now. So all the transactions which this organization does with the out of the country will be translated by the bank, because they make the payment through the bank. Okay, so the bank will say, we are applying this rate for the payments which you make outside within this month, or at the end of the month they will give a closing rate. So that the opening rate plus the closing rate divided by 2 will be taken as the average rate. Whereas for balance sheet accounts, the closing rate as on 31st March 2000 whatever, as on the 31st of March of that year, that rate is taken as the closing rate. So if you see here, this property, okay, this rate type property, FX, if you put FX here, then it is eligible for currency translation. So this is one of the important properties in R account dimension, which will facilitate currency translation. So both these average and closing, I've put FX, which means, yes, I want all the accounts which have average as their rate type, and closing as their rate type, to be available or to participate in the currency translation process. Now let's go into account dimension, and I will show you how it is integrated or linked. See here, rate type. In the account dimension, the rate type here is defined for each GL account. So for balance sheet, I've defined closing, and for this session purpose, I've changed these two balance sheet accounts to average just to demonstrate to you. Okay, and for P&L accounts, it is average. See here, P&L accounts average. Okay, so this is the rate type in account dimension, and this rate type is defined in our account. Here we have defined only two rate types. There are other rate types like historical and all those stuff, but they are not commonly used as of during the business scenario. In our example, we are using only these two rate types. Okay. All right. Now the next one is audit trail. Audit trail. Here we have to give is translated, and we have G, Y and N. G means it's translated to the group currency. Y means yes, it is translated. No means no, it's not used in the process of translation. And blank means yes. Okay, so these are the different options to specify whether these audit trails are eligible for translation. Okay, and is there anything else? No. Others are all for carry forward. Okay, this is the next step which we have to look into and define. Normally all this would be already done. If not done, you have to go to the business and ask them which are the audit trails you want to be eligible for currency translation or to participate in currency translation. Then the next one is entity. Go to the entity dimension, and here you have to specify the respective currency. Okay, so you have to say what is the respective currency for Australia or the local currency. Okay, and you have to already you would have specified the parent node, and here I have not defined any translation rule set, so I've left it blank. So the main thing which you have to look into is that you have to define the respective local currency, and you have to check whether the parent is defined properly here, because only when the parent is defined properly, the ownership model or the ownership details will refer the entity details, and from here it will pick it up, and if there is no sync between the entity dimension and the ownership, then you might face some problems in doing the currency translation. Then the next one is scope. Here you have to give the currency type in scope. Here you say it's group currency, G means group, and N no scope, no scope has no currency, so you've given N. Now here there are two aspects which you have to look into. Okay, one is the CSO entity. Now we are getting into accounts related functional part. This might be a little bit confusing, but the second time, third time when you look into it, you would find it understanding. You would understand the concept. Now when you enter a transaction in Canada company code, now our child is Canada and our parent is US company. Okay, when a transaction is entered in the child or the Canadian company, okay, it will be recorded in the Canadian dollars. Okay, and it will be recorded under S9. There is no group, there is no scope. Okay, there is no scope, there is no parent when it is entered. It is at the Canadian level. So Canadian, I mean, I'm not a parent to myself. So when a transaction is entered by myself, I will say I have spent so much. And at that time, I will say there is no scope, or I will use S none member. When it is translated, then only my parent will come into place, because at that time only I'm translating to USD. Okay, so my parent here as per this thing is S world. When I'm translating only, my parent will come into place, and the scope now is my parent S world. Okay, so this is what, and there is an imaginary company code where all this intergroup elimination, all the business rule transactions, all the offsetting and cancellations, the currency translation defined business rules will post to a consolidation entity, which is known as CSO. So we have to see three things. One is no scope, which is eligible for the Canadian company. Another one is a separate entity, CSO, consolidation entity, where all the consolidation related entries, adjustments will be parked or posted in. So keeping all the other data separate, and all the adjustments which is done at the consolidation level in the BPC system will be posted to this CSO entity. Okay, this is a consolidation entity which is separate from the other normal entities which you see here. Okay, and the topmost node here is the S underscore world scope level. Okay, so here we are saying store entity. So when you do the translation, store the results in the same entity itself. Okay, and here store group currency. So when at the group currency level also store it in the same entity. So you're specifying yes here under store entity and store group currency. So the local currency will also be stored here. The group currency translation will also be stored here, and at the CSO level also it will be stored. Okay, we'll see the example and I'll show you. Okay, and the next thing is business rule. So by this time you would know how to create a business rule. Select here, add business rules. Okay, here select the one currency translation and click on OK. This will come, and here I've defined two business rules, one for average and one for closing. So if we go into average, I've just everything else pick up whatever is there from the transaction, and the formula is average, and that's it. There is no other parameters given here. In the same way, closing, you don't need this actually. Pick up everything which comes here, and the formula is closing. Closing is nothing but taking the closing balance, and all this is default. I mean, it is provided by BPC. So all you have to do is just use it, and you don't have to make any major modifications. Okay, so the business rule here is that there are two, one for average and one for closing. I've given the formula average, and for closing the formula used is CLO, which is closing. Okay, and the next step is ownership model. Now, as I've told you, we have to define the ownership for the maintenance of the relationship between one entity and another. So go to Consolidation Central, Ownership Manager, Okay, so for whichever period you are going to do currency translation, choose here the period, and each period you have to go and copy the ownership. Okay, so here I'm going to go to January. Okay, edit. Is this the, no, sorry, let me change M1 consolidation. Yeah, Word. Okay, so I'm going to copy this to, I'm going to copy the ownership structure which is available in 2006-01 to, I have to select the category which is actual, and the period is to February 2006. So each month you have to do this, or else the currency translation will not work. So as soon as you've copied, save. Okay, so select February. So in February also you have the ownership defined. Okay, now the next step is logic script. Now this is the script. Let me go into the system. FX trans is the logic script, and its currency run program car underscore conversion with these following parameters and end program. So as I've told you before, whatever is within the percentage sign is a variable, and it will accept the value for that variable and transfer, and send it as an input parameter for this category, and for time to TID underscore array, and for the rate entity is assigned a fixed value which is global, and scope, it's accepted from the user from through a variable and transferred. And other, this is another way of saying, either you can say entity is equal to percentage entity underscore set percentage, or you can also say other is equal to open square bracket entity is equal to percentage entity underscore set percentage close square bracket. So this way also we can define the input parameters and variable values. Okay, so using these input parameters, this program will be called and executed. Okay, so this is the logic script. If you see now, you call the program and then you define the input parameters. That's the major thing which you do in a logic script, as so far we've seen. So there's nothing much complicated in all these stuff. So FX trans is your logic script. Now here I've entered 100. Okay, and the data manager package is FX restatement. Okay, so when I run this, I have actual, and the scope is at the parent level. I have to run the currency translation, which is S word, and I'm running this for February 2006, and the entity is, I'm running for all. I don't have to specify here. So next, there's apart from that, there is no other screen. So click on run and view status. So it has succeeded. Okay, so close, EPM, refresh. Okay, so if you see here, it has converted. So what is our exchange rate? So this is our exchange rate for 1 USD. Our exchange rate is 0.7. Did I put it the other way around? Okay, my yeah, it's the other way around. I've defined. Let's go into the rates model and see the rate. Okay, so here it has translated. The local currency was Canadian dollars, which is 100. It was translated to USD of 78.41. So here, if we see 1 USD is equal to 0.7845 Canadian dollars. Okay, so if 1 USD is equal to this, then how much is 100 Canadian dollars? How much is 100 Canadian dollars equal to USD? This I think you would be in a better position to understand, but let me just put it here. So this is equal to this into this divided by this. Okay, now if you see here, as per our example, it should be 127.4697, but we've got 78.45. Now the reason is, here in one of these things, there's a parameter which defines whether to multiply or divide. If we have given the opposite sign, then it will give you the not here. Reporting currency. Here. So we've given multiply here, which means it will, rather than dividing, it will multiply. Okay, you can give divide also, it depends. So here in our example, we have, where's our example? Okay, it's here. In our example, we have divided here. Okay, see here I've given slash. So if you give multiply, you will get this answer 78.45. And where is this defined? This is defined here as M. Okay, so it just, the numbers are all, you know, the thing, but we have to understand the functionality that if you give D here, it will divide. If you give M here, it will multiply. So the option is left to you. I'm just demonstrating the M option. Please try out the D option. Okay, so that's how we have got this option. Okay, that's how we have got the 78.45 here. Now this is, there are four things we have to look into when it comes to currency translation. One is the recording of the transaction will be done at LE level. LE is nothing but the legal entity. Here it is Canadian entity, and it will be done at LE level with no group. LE level with no group or no scope. Okay, so that will be at Canadian company code CA and no scope or S none, and this would be 100 Canadian dollars. Okay, this is the first thing. Okay, now the second thing would be LE level with group, with no group. Okay, but the converted data. LE level with no scope but the converted data. So this is the second line item would be, what happened? Okay, the first line item would be at the Canadian dollars. Okay, so which is not the actual thing. This is converted data into USD. Okay, so this would be 78.45 USD. All right, now the third line item would be LE level with group data and its converted data. LE level with group or scope converted data in USD. Okay, and that would be S world $78.45 USD. All right, and the fourth line item will be CSO level with group converted data. CSO level with scope converted data. Okay, so that will also be 78.45 USD. Okay, now let's go into our BW system. So this is the what I was explaining. So for BS111 input actual, the entity is Canada, balance at LC level, S none, it's 100 Canadian dollars, which is not the converted data. It is in Canadian dollars and it is at the scope S none. Okay, now the second line item would be, as soon as you, this is what is recorded, entered into the system. As soon as you run the data manager package, the FX trans package, these three line items will be generated by the FX trans.lgf package. Okay, so this is the first line item, is the actual transaction which is posted into the system, and these three will be generated as soon as you execute the data manager package fxtrans.lgf. Okay, Now, what this second line item does is it records at S none, but the converted data in USD. Okay. The third line item is it records the data, the converted data in USD at the group level or at the parent level. The fourth line item records the data at the CSO entity in the USD currency at the group level, the converted data. So these are the three additional things which are generated. One, it is recorded at the Canadian entity in USD. Okay, it is recorded at the Canadian entity in USD at no scope. The third line item, Canadian entity in USD at the world scope level. And the fourth line item, CSO entity USD at world scope level. So in three different ways the converted data is stored, so that at each layer when you look at the data it gets tallied or it makes sense. So one is at the Canadian entity at S-none level, Canadian entity at group level, CSO entity at group level. So all this is three different ways of representing the converted data. Why are we doing this? It is to maintain a balanced TB at each layer of the consolidation system. Okay. Now let's go and have a look at the rates model. Now, previously I was connected to the consolidation model. Now I'm connecting to the rates model to input the currency exchange rates. This we saw yesterday. Where on monthly basis you have to go and enter the exchange rates for average and closing. Okay. So here I'm connected to the rates model. EPM open. I have an input form which will capture all my exchange rates input. Okay. So here I'm maintaining the rates. So for February, see 1 USD is equal to 0.7845 Canadian dollars. Like this I've maintained for the entire year 2006, for from January to December. So I'm just translating I'm making a ratio that because my group currency is USD, always USD will be 1 and all the other currencies will be in par or will be in ratio to US currency 1, USD 1. Okay. So if I have India, then again with reference to USD, how much is the ratio that I will put here. Like that I will put for all the months as and when I get data, and I will, before doing currency translation, it is mandatory that you have your rates input or exchange rates inputted into the rates model, and your ownership is defined for that period. Okay. So these two informations or these two input parameters is a must before you go into currency translation. So that's how it picks this rate from the rates model and then it does the currency translation. In the same way, it goes to the ownership model and defines which is the parent and which is the child, and it translates accordingly. Okay. Any doubts? I know this is a little bit advanced because it's totally accounts related and a bit functional, but um, thank you. Thank you. But again, in the